The war on Iran is no longer just a confrontation between two countries. It seems to be a regional crisis with global economic consequences. Over the past 24 hours, we've seen a clear shift. Energy infrastructure is now at the center of the conflict, from strikes on Iran's South Pars gas field to retaliatory attacks on Gulf facilities, including Qatar and Kuwait. At the same time, the United States is stepping up its military operations, while insisting it does not seek a broader war, even as it deploys what it describes as its largest strike packages yet. And beyond the battlefield, the risks are still growing. Oil markets are under pressure, the Strait of Hormuz is increasingly at risk, and world leaders are warning the conflict could spiral out of control. We're going to discuss all of these developments with our guests in just a moment. And to start our discussion, we welcome our distinguished guest, starting with you, Mr. Chris Sassy, political analyst and financial expert, joining us via video conference. Thank you for joining us.
Salam alaikum, Eid Mubarak. Merci for the invitation. Thank you for the invite.
Wa alaikum salam, happy Eid. And also joining us is Mr. Burzu Daragai, an international journalist, joining us from Istanbul. Thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And also with us is Hussam Berkan in the studio. Thank you for participating in tonight's program.
Thanks for having me, Miriam.
Thank you very much. And perhaps before starting the first question to you, Mr. Chris, today marks the 20th day of the war with the U.S. calling it its largest strikes packages yet, coinciding with Eid, the celebration of the end of the holy month of Ramadan, a moment of peace and reflection normally. How do you interpret the timing and the message behind this escalation?
Well, as we are going through, as you said, the day 19 of this war, we don't have to forget that Iran was defending themselves, contrary to all what is over the news. Israel and the United States attacked Iran. They didn't have any strategy. All what they were saying, and seeing this, specifically Israel, for 40 years, always each year at the UN, they come and they say in 2 weeks, Iran is going to have the nuclear bomb, which is absolutely false, and it was proven many times in the instance of the United Nations. Besides that, even within the administration, the escalation should not happen. It was no reason for this attack. All what happened is Trump was listening to the warmonger, Netanyahu, and both of them have some issue that they have made their people to forget. Trump with the Epstein file, as I'm sure you're aware of it, all the hiding behind this conspiracy, and Netanyahu because fraud, and of course, all the misdemeanor that he did have with his own Knesset. Mm-hmm. The escalation now is taking, unfortunately, is worldwide, economically with the Strait of Hormuz, but also global economy is stopped because of all of this. Mm-hmm. 20% of the passage on the Detroit, not only for the oil, by the way, you have also all the other products. And now they're attacking the oil refinery of Iran. And this is where the clarity, the strategy is none. Trump came yesterday saying that Israel should never attack.
Mr. Sassi, maybe we will get back to the repercussions and consequences of the war. Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Burzu, I want to actually start to talk about what's happening in Washington, specifically the resignation of Joe Kent, the former counterterrorism chief, over the Iran war. This has reignited a sensitive debate about Israeli influence on U.S. policy. How do you read this moment?
Well, I think that it's still not clear what has happened. I thought that it was interesting that Joe Kent tried to maintain his good relations with Trump and continue to praise Donald Trump even as he resigned. He could have been influenced by Israel, as he said. Trump could have been influenced by Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel. But ultimately, it was Trump's decision to launch this war. As Anthony Blinken came out and said, the former Secretary of State under Joe Biden and a national security official under Barack Obama, that both those presidents were also told the same thing by Benjamin Netanyahu, and both of them told him to get lost and not to launch the war, and that they wouldn't help him if he did. So I think it says more about Trump and the cult of MAGA that Joe Kent still wants to believe in Donald Trump, even after a war that he knows is going to be a disaster.
Sassi, thank you. Mr. Sassi, back to you. We've seen the resignation letter, which many described as shocking. How do you interpret Kent's message and also its implications?
Well, just to notice, Joe Kent resigned on March 17 in protest of this US war with Iran. He argued that in this letter that Iran posed not imminent threat and that the conflict was driven by Israeli pressure. And Trump didn't do anything, or he was misled by the president, by Netanyahu. The key aspect of the letter: number one, you have the core accusation. Kent blamed high-ranking official, Israeli official, an influential member of the American media, and of course, AIPAC, the lobby, Zionist lobby in America, for creating the misinformation to draw the U.S. into the disastrous war that you are living today. And then within the administration of Trump, Kent is enhancing the internal distance. The resignation highlights significantly the rift within the Trump administration regarding the Iran conflict. And the White House response was that the White House dismissed the letter and beginning to call Kent false accusation. And as today in the newspaper, the FBI now is going after Kent for what he did put in the letter. Though I want to give you back the parallel, but the reaction, the critic, you have even the Senator Mitch Cornell, for example, that said the letter was a virulent anti-Semitism, which it was not anti-Semitism. Or Kent was saying that now Trump was misled. We are in a war that the United States was in a war that nobody wants. And now we see the price and why Kent resign.
Hussam, maybe a comment on the resignation letter of Kent,
Kent,
3 days ago. What is your comment? We're seeing Trump administration aides commenting on it very badly, and we've heard, Chris, that there is an FBI investigation into all of this. So what's your comment?
Exactly. So Mariam, when we talk about Joe Kent, this is the very first time since the beginning of the war somebody from inside the administration is directly stating that there's no imminent threat.
Yes.
And we should understand that since the beginning of the war, the very first argument used by the United States, or we could say by the Trump administration, by the White House, is that there was an imminent threat to the United States. This is like the basics of this war. This is the very first time somebody from inside the house stating that there was no imminent threat, and it's not nobody. It's Joe Kent. He's like the director of the Counterterrorism Center, and he's one of the Trump's people. He's one of the most trusted people in the Trump's administration, and he's from inside the deep state. He was part of the CIA. He works with the Pentagon, and he's literally is aware of all the reports and all the data that is inside the White House. And for him to state this, it's literally contradict the narrative or the story that the White House is trying to sell to the Americans. Not only this, Miriam, but today there was another hearing of a very interesting personality, which is Tulsi Gabbard, and she had hearing the Congress. She is the director of the National Intelligence DNI, and she testified at the Senate Intelligence Committee Annual, which is under the theme Worldwide Threats. Worldwide Threats. And during the hearing, she literally also stated the same statements of Joe Kent, which contradict directly what the White House was saying. And here we could say that there is
Division?
Exactly. There's division inside the Trump administration. And it's a huge deal. It's actually a big deal what is going on right now. And all the media in the United States, all the biggest media outlets are talking about this. And it's like, it's a big deal. And we don't know exactly, it's a lot of pressure also on the Trump administration, because this goes inside the, after each attack, every day there are attacks on Iran, and after each day, the Trump administration needs to do a press conference. They need to answer questions, and they need to justify. Now, with these people making statements that are very strong, and from the inside the administration, it literally destroys the narrative, and it destroyed the credibility of the justification presented by the White House. And here also, like they were talking about, like the funding, they need more than $200 billion funding. I believe that we're going to talk about this
We're going to talk about this in the next points.
Perfect.
Burzo, perhaps when we look at the last 48 hours, especially the expansion of strikes beyond Israel and Iran into the Gulf, are we still in a bilateral conflict or a regional war?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a regional war, especially if you factor in the reports that Russia and China are providing Iran with signals and satellite intelligence and so on, and that, this is definitely becoming a regional conflict. You had also some extraordinary developments. After days of the U.S. and Israel saying that they've degraded Iran's missile capacity and its ability of offensive action, you have the number of Iranian strikes and Iranian drone swarms increasing in recent days, and that's quite extraordinary. You also had a strike today on the refinery in Haifa, just off the coast of Israel, as well as a direct hit, perhaps the first in history, of a U.S. F-35 stealth fighter by Iranian anti-aircraft. Wait a second, I thought that Iran had no more anti-aircraft.
Understood. Maybe Hussam, what is your take on that?
So basically, Miriam, we live in a world where all economies of the world are interconnected. And also we're living in a world where how the war is being fought is different than the past. So when we look about the balance of power between the United States, Israel, and Iran, we could see that in terms of military, the United States and Israel are stronger. But the wars of today are fought on different dimensions. One of the most important of them is the economic dimension, and this is basically one of the most important cards that Iran is playing. And as I said, since like all the economies are interconnected, Miriam, every single event that happens probably in any part in the world can have a huge impact on people that are thousands of kilometers so far. And here we talk about something very interesting called the butterfly effect, Miriam. So basically, for example, a decision made by Iran to probably threat of closing the Hormuz Straits might affect people all over the world. Like Americans currently are suffering from just like threatening of closing a strait that is thousands of kilometers far from the United States. So a statement by Donald Trump in the United States might affect somebody in Asia. So since everything is interconnected, wars now are being fought differently, and every decision and every action and every things that is happening currently has a huge influence and effect on all over the world. So we've been asking if it's like a regional war, is it an international war? In terms of economy, every move from each of these players, whether the United States, Israel, or Iran, every move they're going to make, even though it's regional, but the consequences are international and global.
Mr. Assassi, there are also conflicting accounts regarding the strike on Iran's gas field. Trump says the U.S. had no prior knowledge or involvement. Other reports suggest some level of coordination or awareness between the U.S. and Israel have been done. What do these mixed signals, contradictory statements, tell us about coordination between the U.S. and the Zionist entity, after all?
Well, to be frank with you, I have difficulty to read in these two leaders. One, Trump is going to tell you something now, and tomorrow is going to change his mind. The other one is worse, the devil's person. What I'm trying to understand in what they are saying, I don't believe Trump was not aware of it. It's not, nothing can move in that part of the world without America knowing it. Mm-hmm. On the top of it, the GCC, I am sure, they get back to him and they tell him, look what is going on. Why? And they told him before, why this war? We don't need this war. And we are also a country that is working with you. We try to open dialogue with you between the two belligerents. And what you did, you stabbed them in the back. And now he's coming and say, oh, I didn't know. Because he did the bombing 6 days before to the small island, but he didn't touch the pipe. Mm-hmm. Why? Because he knew, like your predecessor, the gentleman with you in the plateau, know that, you know, whatever happened in that part of the world, because of the Brent crude oil, is a major benchmark for all the economy of the world.
Mm-hmm. Burzo,
and
perhaps.
What happened is...
Yes, please.
Ahead, yes.
Sorry for interrupting you. Please continue.
Yes, the Brent crude oil, it's a major benchmark for the world. Now, if you look at the price, and then I reinforce what your journalist within your plateau was saying, before the war, the Brent crude was about between $65 and $70. At today's date, at the closing, it was $120. It's almost double.
Yes.
How can Trump was not aware that Israel was going to bombard the oil utility of Iran? Mm-hmm. I have a lot of difficulty. Is it to do speculation? Now he was obliged to leave the reserve to avoid this increase in the oil. Or they are again and again playing the good cop and the bad cop. But let's resume. I will resume saying this. Mm-hmm. Whatever you are saying at the present time, look at 1952. Look at 1979. Look at 2008. And look at today's date. Iran was always the object of hatred from not only Israel, but also from what you call today the GCC country. Don't forget, they are the one who financed the war with Iraq and Iran for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And today they are complaining that they are attacked. But they attack, of course, they are attacking 14 American bases coming from your country and killing the innocent people in Iran. In the beginning, they were talking about, you know, we don't want them to have the nuclear bomb. Now it was proving that they didn't look for it. They had a fatwa, which was done against that. And now they were saying that, you know, they are killing 30,000 of their people. For God's sake, you have to save 13,000 killing and you want to go and protect them with the B-52 and the F-16. Why you didn't talk when you have more than 80,000 people being killed in Gaza? Where was your humanitarian sentiment?
Understood.
And this is what
maybe
I said again and again.
Speaking about, understood, Mr. Sassi, maybe speaking about the regional countries, also the GCC or Gulf countries. Burzo, let's talk about the countries in this region like Qatar, which is calling for de-escalation while also warning they reserve the right to respond. Are Gulf states being pulled into the conflict, whether they want it or not, in your opinion?
Well, you know, it was the Gulf states' decision to host these U.S. bases. And it appears, even the Wall Street Journal is reporting today, that the U.S. is using the airspace and the territory of these countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, maybe Qatar, but definitely those countries to launch attacks on Iran. And Iran knows this. Those bases are not there as a joke. Those bases are there to target Iran, and they always have been. And Iran knows that, and the Gulf knows that. And they had promised that they would not allow the U.S. to use their territory for launches against Iran. Yet there are, some dude on Instagram posted a picture of the U.S. Military using a HIMAR short-range artillery device right from the desert of Bahrain against Iran. So, they're using that territory. And so in the Iranian eyes, that's a legitimate target.
Right. Maybe we will talk now about the U.S. position in this war with you. Mr. Sassi, Donald Trump says there will be no deployment of ground troops, yet U.S. officials said today and confirmed continued large-scale strike operations. They said today are the largest so far. And the administration is requesting additional funding. Trump is asking for more money to fund this ongoing war. How do you interpret this?
Well, if I'm thinking like Joe Sixpack in America, 80%, 87% of Americans, including the MAGA base of Trump, they're against this war. Now, he's talking about boots in Iran. Iran is not Venezuela. Iran is 95 million people. Iran is the size of Europe. What he's going to do there? He is not going to do it. He's just talking psychological war, thinking that the Iranians are going to buy it. But Iranians are very resilient. When they say something, they will do it. When they bombarded their field, what they did right away, they did it. And today, Haifa in Israel was hit and damaged, and even the Israeli now they're allowed, despite the censorship that they have, to recognize that it was some damage there. So therefore, the Americans, they don't want this war. Now, as you said, Miriam, he's asking for $200 billion to continue this war. This war costs to the American taxpayer, which I am, $2 billion a day. Israel doesn't pay any penny for it. We, as the American citizen, are paying it. And I don't think he's going to have the guts to put soldiers on the ground. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to. Even though what I'm trying to say, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is my expectation, this war is going to hand in maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They cannot sustain an endurance, not only because they don't want it, but they don't have the munition for it, despite whatever they said. If not, they will not go and ask for $200 billion to do all necessary to continue. That's my point of view. And economically, basically, I'm an economist at the moment. Economy, Wall Street do not accept it.
We have seen prices rising just today.
Is coming. I'm sorry?
I've said that we have today seen the prices rising in the U.S. The repercussions are already felt worldwide. Maybe before wrapping up, just a take with Hussam. So can we say that these powers are controlling the escalation, or they're losing control of it? They can't stop it.
So basically, Mariam, we should understand, or most of the reports are talking now about like who's benefiting from this war, and most of the reports are saying that it's Israel. So basically, what we're seeing, since Israel is, is the one that benefiting from the war, is doing everything possible to actually escalate because it wants more escalation. And at the end of the day, they have certain goals that I want to achieve, and escalation is literally what they want. So just another idea regarding the $200 billion that they want to do. Even though this war is a war of choice, it's a very unpopular war among Americans. Even though there are officials that are saying that there is no imminent threat, and the United States is not involved in this. Even though the national security strategy of the United States is focusing on the Monroe Doctrine and focusing only on the Western Hemisphere, but the United States is continuing, and they're asking for $200 billion of funding. But the problem here, Mariam, even though it's unpopular and they're all against it, the Congress actually has the majority of Republicans. They have the majority in Congress, and most likely at the end of the day, even though most of Americans don't want this war, but most likely the Republicans are gonna give to the Trump administration the $200 billion. And it's not only $200 billion, but the Secretary of War said for the moment, it's $200 billion. They might go even further in the next few weeks or the next few months.
Mr. Sessi, maybe on the objectives of the U.S., the officials are pointing out or indicating that operations will continue, but without a clear timeline, they refuse to give a defined endpoint. At the same time, there are indicators that U.S. and Israeli goals may not fully align. So how sustainable is a military campaign and where the end goals are not clearly defined or shared? Where is this going?
Well, exactly, you put the nail of the coffin, Miriam. Because of the cost of this war, because now they know that they don't have any strategy. Now, even the general within the army of US are talking to.
Fortunately, I'm being told that we're running out of time. Mr. Sessi, you've joined us from Biskra. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you so much again, Miriam, and hope you see you soon.
Thanks to Burzu, and thank you, Hussam, for your discussion with us tonight, and thanks to our dear viewers for watching tonight's edition.